All right, good afternoon, everybody. We're going to talk about hyperautomation and what ServiceNow is doing in this hyperautomation space, right? And so we've got our nice little tagline there, but more importantly, hyperautomation might be new to you. And so we wanted to share a bit of what we're doing in this area. By way of a quick introduction, oh, shoot, I should probably say hi. I'm just going to put my camera on. I'll say hi to everybody this way. So by way of quick introduction, my name's Leonard Picagna. I've been with ServiceNow I'm getting close to 4 years. I've got a deep specialization in our AI and machine learning technology to drive automation. A bit of my background, if you've taken any of the predictive intelligence courses or the NLU courses, I've either written them or I've contributed to them. Or if you've taken any of the predictive intelligence classes, I've probably been the author of a lot of those. And then I'm also an active writer on the community around predictive intelligence. So please do post your questions to the chat and I'll try to get to them toward the end. Safe harbor, I will be touching on a few things that will be coming up beyond San Diego, right? We're on the San Diego release today. And let's just talk about hyperautomation. So with hyperautomation, part of the outcomes that we're trying to achieve is the acceleration of automation. And so this acceleration of automation beyond what we're doing today is a new differentiator for companies. And so there's a study by Bain & Company that did a study, and they found that leaders are really pressing this ability to automate faster as a competitive advantage. And they're finding some great outcomes by driving this faster automation, be it whether or not they are driving revenue growth, better supply chain resilience, and better productivity than their competitors that aren't on this automation, pushing this automation throughout their organization. And just to kind of press the point home, Gartner did a study that they talked about that hyperautomation has shifted from an option, like a buzzword to a condition of survival. And so it's no surprise that many organizations are already leading and driving a bunch of hyperautomation initiatives underway. So what hyperautomation does, it allows us to answer some key questions to transform the business. And so those key questions for us falls into these four pillars, and we've organized it in this way: discover, automate, apply AI, and analyze. And so under discover, we're asking, what are our processes and how can we discover new ones? So that's process mining. Where are our bottlenecks and our opportunities? So where can we automate? What are our automation opportunities? Under automation, it's all about, well, how can I quickly automate legacy systems that I haven't been able to touch before because there isn't an API, okay? Or how do I integrate and automate lots of different systems, a lot of disparate systems? Under apply AI, we are now getting to a point where we can actually use the AI to make a decision. We can embed AI into our workflows. We've got AI in our interfaces to make recommendations of maybe predicting an assignment group or predicting the priority when somebody types in a short description. And then finally, analyze. So how do we take the analytics and the closed loop of this? And how can we say, okay, we've gone through and we've identified areas to automate, but are they really, is it really making a difference? Okay. And then having that baseline to measure that. Okay. So these are all things that hyperautomation helps us do. You'll have this slide, but I invite you to think later, how can this help and align to what are the things that you're trying to accomplish in your organization as you continue to drive digital transformation forward. All right, so I've been dropping hyperautomation left and right, and I haven't gone through and I haven't defined it. So what the heck is hyperautomation? And there's a lot of definitions out there. And so from a ServiceNow perspective, hyperautomation is a business strategy to automate as much as reasonably possible in the enterprise, really automating so that we can drive outcomes and insight and really execute at scale. It's also we see it as an end-to-end approach to accelerating automation using a framework of people, methods, and technology, all with the end goal to create that automation to make work easier for you or your users, your employees, or your customers. So hyperautomation, sometimes folks hear it and they say, oh, that's RPA, remote process automation, right? But it's not. Hyperautomation is actually a new thing that was introduced a few years ago, coined by Gartner. And it uses, as I mentioned in that previous slide, it's a business imperative to automate everything as reasonably as possible. It's a methodology. It's also a combination of different technologies, not just RPA, not just that remote process optimization, but it's the combination of AI, process mining, low code automation, computer vision, just to name a few things. And so how do we apply hyperautomation to an order to cash workflow, like something that most folks are probably familiar with, where we create a new order and an order is fulfilled. So in the gray, we've got how you might do that in a legacy environment where a new order is created and it goes through and bops around between, maybe you look something up on a computer through some apps, you communicate something through an email, you might talk on the phone, you might get a PDF through an email, which you then have to process into your system. You may have to check the credit status of the customer that is placing the order. Maybe it's like 5 million widgets and you got to make sure that they've got enough credit to go ahead and purchase that. And then you may have to call. And so with hyperautomation, we take that process and we create a digital experience, right? Using our low code app environments, like our app engine, our automation engine, our flow designer, our mobile experience. So we create that digital experience. Then that PDF that comes through an email, that contract, we can digitize it using OCR. We can extract the important information out of it. And then we can trigger invoice processing through an RPA bot. We can make a decision using artificial intelligence. So we can, instead of a human trying to figure out creditworthiness and trying to figure that out, we use our machine learning to figure out that decision and take action. And then instead of making a phone call, we can have a portal where customers can go and check status. And so that's just a quick view of how we transform maybe a legacy process of how folks are doing things today in order to cash, to using hyperautomation to improve that experience for the end user. So how do you begin? So we recommend that you start with the automation piece. That's the low-hanging fruit. Most of you out there probably have automation initiatives. You may be doing RPA today. You may be automating with our integration hub or our flow designer. So that's the best place to start. And then as you journey toward hyperautomation and try to recognize all the benefits of discover, applying AI and optimizing, it's a journey. You can take iterative small steps to get you there as you mature toward that space. So ServiceNow, of course, we're talking about hyperautomation. So we wouldn't be talking to you if we couldn't help you solve problems in this space. So our platform has now the complete capabilities that will allow you to drive hyperautomation in your organization. And here are those 4 pillars again: the discover, automate, apply AI, and optimize. And then I've got some of the product mappings, and you may have some of these in your organization. I'll cover what actual products you need to do this, but you may have some of these technologies already in your organization, but there's a mapping here, and we'll dive down into each one of these. Okay. So under the discover part, we have something called automation discovery, right? And so what this does is, whenever you're trying to automate something, and I've been doing this for, as I mentioned, helping customers for close to 4 years, they always say, great, where do we start? You talked about all this great automation technology through workflow, through maybe AI ops technology, through chatbots such as the virtual agent. Where do we start? And so the great thing is we use the machine learning to run what we call an automation discovery report to mine your data. We go through your incident, your case, your request data, and we will identify opportunities for automation, and we'll match it to things that we have out of the box. So when we first started this, it was around virtual agent. So we'd go through and we would identify everything that our virtual agent out of the box could handle. Now we can do it for AI operations. So, and then we'll be able to do it for workflow, and then we'll be able to do it for bots. So that's actually the vision of the automation discovery. So it allows us to see these patterns that we may be able to take advantage of to automate. And I'll go and show you a quick demo of that as well. Process optimization. So we introduced process mining to allow us to go through and build out what you're looking at here, these process maps. And so what we're doing is we're actually looking at your audit logs, and we're building out a process map, and we're using machine learning against that process map to identify bottlenecks or transitions that don't make a lot of sense. Okay. And so with that discover part, we're able to discover automation opportunities, not only in your process, but also in the incidents and cases that you log. On the automate side, we introduced automation engine. And so it's composed of, so automation engine, what that allows us to do, it's our native low code capability to integrate and automate anything. And so the goal, right, is to be able to automate everything. And we accomplish that first with a very strong foundation in Integration Hub, which most customers are familiar with since that's been around for a while. But in San Diego, we introduced RPA Hub. And so this was came from our IntelliBot acquisition about over a year ago, which was, they made software bots to automate things where we needed to automate, for example, connecting to a legacy system, like doing activity against a mainframe or an AS400 or anything with like complex UI process flows. And so that is the new part in San Diego where we introduced the RPA Hub. And so the automation engine and the RPA Hub can be accessed seamlessly through Flow Designer. So if you're using Flow Designer today, you'll see that there is an action to call an RPA Hub. You can also call predictive intelligence, our AI, from it. And looking at the left-hand side, if you're already using some of our packaged workflows in IT and employee workflows, the automation engine just helps you enhance that. And we do that through having almost 200 spokes connecting to anything from, SAP, Azure, Workday, Jira. So we have all these spokes that allow you to connect to different things without writing a line of code. And it helps us improve not only the workflows that we have for a particular like IT, HR, or CSM, or your creator workflows, but anything that you have that's custom. So some of the core components I've got on the screen here of the RPA Hub that got released in the San Diego release. So it got released in March. But really the overall strategy of RPA, or remote process optimization, it's there to help you automate and integrate the messy, complex work done by a human. So anytime you have somebody doing a task, maybe they're in a chair and they're taking information from a spreadsheet and they're entering into a purchase order system and they're entering it into another system. Sometimes it's faster to have a robot, a software robot, do that task. And that software robot can either take that task over completely, or that software robot can work alongside the human in the case of like a call center. And maybe that software robot does some things for the human agent, and then the human does some things, and it waits for the human to finish, and it goes off and does some of the more repetitive things. So sometimes it's faster for a robot to do that. Versus, trying to untangle, maybe you do have APIs to all these things that you need to integrate, but maybe it's faster for a robot to do it versus untangling and figuring out all these APIs and building a workflow around these APIs. Because if you've done, you've probably run into this where you've done development, sometimes those APIs don't do what you need them to do, or they don't return the data that you need. Okay. And so you could just, often you can just say, hey, I can do this today with a person and on a website. And so that's where RPA Hub comes in. It helps you to drive that automation. And so if a person is doing it, we can automate it. If a system is doing it, we can automate it. And then we can focus on insight and improving our processes. And so there's a number of things on here like native computer vision, desktop and desktop, all these different connectors to mainframes, AS400s, optical character recognition. We can all dive into that. Asher sales team, they can dive into that in a much, more detailed session when we have more time. In the Utah release, which is coming out early 2023, where we're going to release this control tower capability. And so we realize at ServiceNow that we're just entering the RPA space. Now, we're not really entering it. IntelliBot's been doing it for a while. But we're entering it formally after we've taken IntelliBot's RPA technology and integrated into our platform. But mostly you may have RPA technology already in your organization. Maybe it's UiPath, maybe it's Blue Prism. And so what this control tower allows us to do is really our strategy and our focus is to help our customers really manage all those digital robots. And so we want to be that new digital manager. So what we're working on in the Utah release is that if you build the robots in ServiceNow, they'll be registered as CIs, configuration items. We can associate the configuration with an application service. So you can make certain rules when the robots run. So if an application service is down, don't run the robots, the software robots. But if you've got other RPA bots not built in ServiceNow, we will pull that information off those RPA bots and manage it from this control tower. So you'll have a single view of all the RPA bots, ServiceNow and non-ServiceNow, doing work in your organization. Virtual agent is another way that we drive that automation. I won't go into this, but I like to call this the OG, the original gangster bot. But this was one of the first kind of bots that we introduced, software bots. Okay, applying AI. So from AI, I'll cover what's new, but at a high level, what we focus on is these core areas, discovering automation opportunities. We use AI to discover those automation opportunities. I talked about that a little bit earlier when we were in that discover part where we were using AI to mine your data and find and recommend certain automation opportunities. We use it to speed up workflows. So we embed the AI into your workflows to make better decisions. We also use the AI to help agents solve their problems faster. So like a human workflow. All this AI can be embedded into the RPA software bots as well. We use AI in AI ops and predictive AI ops, where we use AI to find patterns and alerts and logs and drive automated remediation. So we're using it to find those patterns so we're not reactive and we can actually take action before a service or application goes down. And finally, we introduced the ability for optical character recognition. And what that means is we can digitize all your documents. And so we have now the ability to digitize your PDFs, your Word documents, and extract data out of that and include it into the flow. So more on that in a few minutes. This is sort of my cheat sheet of some of the classic predictive intelligence in the platform. Classification, we use that to drive the routing. Similarity, we use that to help agents solve problems faster or identify major incidents before they happen. Clustering, we use to identify patterns, such as identifying gaps in your knowledge base where you don't have incidents that are mapped to knowledge articles. And regression, where we can use that to do things like setting expectations on how long it's going to take to resolve an issue. This is just an eye chart. That's here just so you have it in your future slides. But this is where some examples of where we apply AI in the platform. Here's a little bit more detail on the optical character recognition. It's going to be coming out in May. It's called Document Intelligence. And here, if you take a look, you can upload a document. It runs optical character recognition and then allows you to extract those features. And then you can train it. You can give it feedback on whether or not its computer vision figured things out correctly. And then you can take that data and put it into a workflow. Okay. I won't talk about that because that's been around, AI search. Here's just a picture of AI's application in AI ops. So we use AI to improve service operations. So this is where where reacting to alerts is not enough. And when IT departments really need to get in front of issues and understand patterns before there's an impact to the service of the platform. So this is where we're predicting potential issues from log and event data. We're running correlations on alerts, correlating it to change requests, all in real time so that you can create an incident that people can work on to actually prevent an outage before it happens. Okay. All right, and the final part of the platform is being able to measure and have a baseline for all these automations. So right, you applied automation in the beginning, and you should have set so before automation, you should have set a baseline. Then you ran all these automation projects, And then you should be able to have that baseline compare whether the optimization, the automation is actually improving that baseline metric. It could be, reducing number of incidents. It could be reducing mean time to resolve. All right, I'm going to stop there. I did have time for a demo. Well, I did have a demo. Do I have time for a demo? Because we're at 1:46.
Yes, you have time.
1:55, so we're good.
Okay, all right, great. So let me show you a little bit of what this looks like. So from a demo, let me set you guys up. So the scenario for automation is that your team has gone through and has completed a new global rollout of a new version of SAP for sales, HR, and manufacturing. The new version of SAP has been in production for a few months, and you'd like to understand if there are any top SAP issues that can be automated with ServiceNow. And so I'm going to run you through the 4 pillars of discover, automate, apply AI, and optimize. So let's take a look. See. So first thing, so from a discover perspective, I've run automation discovery against the incident data. And so this is using machine learning to look for patterns in your data. And so here I can see, for example, it's found things like it's ranked looking at my incident data, it's ranked that a lot of the incidents are email issues, and it will show me, mean time to resolve, how long it takes, the assignment group distribution, and how people are asking for help around email issues. I'm very interested in the SAP. Oh, and by the way, the check mark there means that it's something that we can solve with something in the platform, where we have something to get you started. Here, I'm very interested in SAP because we started SAP, this rollout, and I can see that there's a lot of SAP access issues in my data. So I've found like an area to focus on, which is SAP access issues. So now I'll run process optimization. And so I'm going to open this project. And again, this is going to it's going to mine out your audit logs and apply machine learning to look for, it's going to look for patterns in your data that can be resolved. So I've run this against my incident data, and I can see that it's saying it's giving me some insights, giving me a KPI, showing me a downward trend on average time to resolve incidents. It's showing, percent of incidents on first call, resolved on first call. And it's showing, hey, there's some unexpected transitions. Transitions are state changes, right? So things that we look out for is if something goes from resolved to open, that would be a state change that that we would be concerned about, right? Or multi-hop issues, like if it's bouncing around different assignment groups. Okay, and so the map will go through and it will map out your process. And so what this is, these nodes in this case are the different states, and I can change the unique occurrences. I can focus it on average duration of those concurrences. So it's saying, and then I want to filter it, and because I'm interested in SAP issues, I'm going to filter it on SAP issues, and I'm going to expand it a bit. And so what I can do is I can see for SAP issues that are coming in, where is maybe some of the bottleneck stuff, and I can actually go in here and I can see the bottleneck information. So it's taking a week to go from resolved to closed. Okay, it's taking from assigned to resolve, it's taking an average duration of a day, or here a year, closed to problem attached. So I would be very curious in mining into like the things that take a lot of time. Like this 1 day thing doesn't concern me, but whenever it's like this 13 years, that's obviously I've got demo data, but in your data, you may have something where it raises an eyebrow and you want to drill into it. And so, and any of these nodes, like this is 270 incidents for SAP that have gone here. I can click on it. I can show the records. I can run cluster analysis. I can do all kinds of things to really get underneath that data and understand where the SAP issue is. Now, so we talked about like being able to use that information to find, areas of automation in SAP. I'll cheat a little bit, and I'll just say if we drilled into some of these incidents, we would see that a lot of those SAP access issues, our agents are taking a remote session, and they're basically removing all the required SAP applications, and they're installing them again in serial order. Okay, so a remote session and doing these steps to reinstall the SAP client. So this looks like something that can be highly automated. So how do we do that? So for time's sake, I'll just do a quick little video. And so here's our RPA hub. So you can see where we can make robotic desktop automation, robotic process optimization. We've got these skills. And as I go through it, it's just going to show a little bit of the interface. I've got my SAP bot there. And so here you can see all the different sort of connectors that we have, like going out to Microsoft Excel, Microsoft Outlook. We can go out to existing integration hub flows. But you can see here where we are, connecting to the SAP purchase order system, to that interface. And so ideally what we would be doing is, and let me back up a little bit here, this bot, so this is an SAP access issue. What I do is I would use the flow designer to automate the access issue problem. And then I'd use this bot, and I'm using this bot to test it, to test whether or not the access that my workflow was supposed to fix actually fixed it. And so this is sort of just the logic of interfacing with the UI and making some decisions, okay? But ultimately what it's going to do when I run it is it's going to run a bot on the user's desktop. It's going to automate the connection into SAP, so you can see it here. So the bot is going through and basically testing the automation that I did. And so it's going through here, and we can automate everything that users interact with, the tasks they do. But now I've got a bot running out there and testing. So think of it, it's a great time saver. Instead of the user, right, going out and testing it, we can make an automation to resolve the issue in Flow Designer. And then we can put out we can publish that flow to handle all those SAP access issues. And then we can deploy a bot to actually test, did this thing really work? And actually test it out for the user. And then we can close the ticket and say, hey, we addressed the issue, and we actually already tested it on your machine. Is it okay for us to go ahead and close the ticket? So that's a very quick example of that. And just let me give you a quick example of the flow behind that, right? This is Flow Designer, but you can see that it is here we've got these new actions in the Flow Designer to add an RPA hub action, which will allow us to add a attended or an unattended robot to the workflow, okay? And then we can go through and we can run that and we can test it. Okay, and with that, I've got a minute. And I think I'll just stop there because that was new stuff. Oh, the last thing I wanted to stop with is what all this stuff that I just talked about. Do you own it? Do you have it? So the technology that I talked about, if you have ITSM Pro or Enterprise, you have a lot of these pieces. But to get the new RPA technology, you have to upgrade to Automation Engine Pro or Enterprise. Okay, so that Hyperautomation piece, these are the two core product SKUs that if you wanted to click all the boxes and do everything that I showed. And then the Predictive AI Ops is an ITOM component. And so that's a separate piece off in the dark over here. All right. So with that, I'm just going to check the chat and I can turn it back over to the main facilitator, the main 10.
Great. Leonard, thank you so much. That was awesome. I, for one, am excited about figuring out how ServiceNow can help make sense and use and logic out of bots and RPA, right? I think a lot of large enterprises are struggling with that. And so the San Diego release is a huge step in that direction, or provides a huge step in that direction. So feel free to reach out to us if you've got questions, or reach out to your account executives and account teams. But very exciting, like really, really cool stuff. All right, let's take a quick, before we jump into our next session, why don't we take a quick look at what Jessica's been building out from digital art. Kind of see it. Oh, my goodness, it's a talent. Right, animate. Awesome. She will be sharing this out with folks afterwards, so you can take a look at it. But what a cool way to kind of visualize everything that Lerner was walking through in the technology group. Hopefully, everybody that attended the retail sessions and manufacturing had as much excitement as we did in the technology session. That is awesome. Thanks so much for sharing. All right, so back to the agenda. We are going to, our next session, obviously. We are a few minutes behind, but the wrap up never takes 15 minutes, usually takes about 90 seconds. So not too worried about us finishing on time. But for the next half hour or so, we're going to talk about, we're going to hear from Chris Pearson, the master architect